welcome to Lead Live, reminding you of your personal genius and how you think in order to actualize what you desire.
Hello. Thank you for joining us today here at Lead Live. Today we're going to talk about something that is kind of taken for granted. And we titled today's broadcast, The Games We Play with Ourselves to Level Up. The games we play. Emphasis on games. And so why do we want to talk about that? We often find ourselves, if we're in reflective mode, outwardly directed, being led, being driven, being imposed by the other or some external circumstance. Those things are typically very powerful and they're real. They're not just imagined. Yet, what if we flip the switch? What if we decide to be internally directed? What if we decided to stop the gaming that's in response to all the factors that are external? And whether we call it gaming to go within or just being authentic, choose to go within and ask ourselves, what is it that we really want to drive us? What do we want to be our core set of values? What do we want to have as our salient vision? What is it that we want to wake up to, inspired by, and walk into the day driven by? Understanding it that at the end of our lives, we will have left a legacy that still inspires us, even as we transition. What is that? So, first of all, let me answer the question that some people may ask, what is leveling up? Well, formally, it's really increasing something in order to remove a disparity. So let's think about women in corporate America, where there's a disproportionate representation of women and people of color, especially Black folks, Native Americans, Latinos, Latinx, in particular Asian groups. We're underrepresented not only in the boardroom and executive roles, but what if we said we wanted to level up? Well, that's a concerted effort to create equity. It's a concerted effort to ensure equal pay for comparable work for women to men. That's the same thing with regards to all women, as particularly Black women who tend to be disproportionately paid much lower than any other group. Or we can say the same thing with regards to Black men who are hired at a lower rate in certain industries. Leveling up is saying we want to, in a concerted way, strategic way, level the playing field and ensure that there's equity of not only opportunity, but representation and whatever else that an individual is seeking to do or create as an end result as a leader, or an organization is looking to do the same. So in terms of leadership, the bottom line, what is leveling up? It's getting a better result. It's being clear about what that result is that we want to get. When I think about the nature of the games we play with ourselves to level up, I also think about what it takes to move beyond where we're at, to stop the gaming that's out externally directed and go internally, go inside and start the process of really being authentic. So what does that mean? It means eliminating doubt. It means eliminating fear. It means understanding that there may be anxiety and pressure around it, but just move it into that space anyway. Because once you actualize, and I'll tell you a couple of stories in a moment, you'll be profoundly surprised if you haven't already done so and you know that experience. It means moving past failures. And in fact, leveraging any failures you've had to grow, to learn from, to use as you move forward. It means understanding that there's particular expectations that have nothing to do with you. You don't have to own them, they're not your stuff. You can just acknowledge them, honor that other people have those expectations of you, and then either put them on the shelf if you think you might want to use them later on, or walk away, keep moving, because they're not relevant to your trajectory, where you want to go. The other is letting go of particular resources, whatever they happen to be, that get in your way of progress. And they could be any kind of resource. Could be a person as a resource, could be a technology, could be a place, could be whatever the resource keeps you constrained. Ask yourself, at the end of the day, is it worth it? Really? 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 And then even, I said people who are harmful to you. And let me just say something that's very important. Yes, you can love someone. You could even like someone. And yet, if they're harming you, doesn't even matter whether it's physical, emotional, psychologically, health-wise in general, professionally, you can let them go. I know it's hard to believe. And that may be the reason why that harm is in your life at the moment. I think back on my own experiences, and I've had people in my life, in personal circumstances and professional circumstances, who've done me great harm or did me great harm. And for some reason, I stuck with them for a while because I loved them. Whether it was an institution, I loved I was passionate and connected to the institution and the community it served. And yet, in order to get out of that unhealthy space, I had to let go, even though it was painful. Even with relationships, letting go, oh my goodness, it's profoundly healing. Yet initially when you do it, the wiring is to go back, because again, who are we if not our habits? We're creatures of habit. We've done this for months, we've done this for years. This is who we are, we must do it. Only if we choose. And that's the power of leadership. When we understand that leadership and leveling up includes the following. This is not an exhaustive list, but I want you to think about this, and I want you to think about this list. So I want you to think about what? I want you to think about focusing. I want you to think about imagining. I want you to think about feeling that imagination, that dreaming that you're about to engage in, if you've not already done so. And I want you to think about choices. See, the power of being human is the power to choose. Even when we're not choosing, I want you to remember you're choosing. Even when you think you're not choosing, you're choosing. When you're settling, when you're saying, this is all I can do, this is all I can do, because X or Y or Z is in the way. The only real entity that's in your way, because you're a creature of the Great Spirit, like I am and every other creature, the only entity that's in your way is you. Look in the mirror. When you're successful, share gratitude to that entity in the mirror, you, and the Great Spirit from which we come, we're part of, and we go back to. Or however you imagine that universal being, whether you call it God, whether you call it Tao, whether you call it whatever you choose to call it. Understand there's something much more magical in play that ensures your greatness, my greatness, all of our greatness. And yet it does require us to focus. It requires us to imagine. It requires us to dream, and ideally dream big. Without a doubt, it requires us to choose. Choose the values that we want, choose the dream we want to pursue, make that a focus, a clear goal, set the parameters, decide on the strategies, and marshal whatever resources we currently have, even if we think they're insufficient, and move. So let's talk about what the so-called insufficiency, okay, to level up. We think we have to have everything we need in order to take a step forward. In fact, some of us are so perfectionist oriented that 5 years later from where we are right now, we're going to be still in the same place because we're so focused on everything being perfect. Do you know that the the vast majority of folks, if not all folks, who are successful in whatever way they define, not the way I define, you define, they acted, they moved, they had faith. We'll talk about that in a second. They had emotional commitment, powerful, beyond measure emotional commitment. They acted. And because they wanted a different result, they used new habits. You can't get a different result using the old habits. And then they were responsible. They were unwavering in their responsibility. Let me tell you a very quick story. I read this book, and I've read, obviously, a lot of books. You can see some, just a handful of books back here. Many are around my place. This book, The Power of Consistency, like a lot of books, autobiography of extraordinary women, men, children. This book hit me in a way that allows me to share those aspects of what we typically call fear. It's a different acronym. F being faith and focus. E being emotional commitment. A being action, and R being responsibility. You see, this gentleman did what I can relate to personally, not in terms of my own actions, but in actions of people I love, brothers, other family members, and friends. Three brothers in particular, I should say. One's deceased, the other two, thank goodness, are still alive. So this gentleman engaged in behaviors that were reprehensible, that landed him on death row. And he expected to die. He had a date certain to die. And he believed that he was responsible for all those inappropriate, heinous criminal activities. And he had settled and decided that he'd transition. One day he read something. He was inspired by Covey, who talks about thinking, focusing on the end that you want to achieve, and then back up and plant the seeds, cultivate the seeds akin to life itself and make it happen. Listen for understanding. I can go on in terms of Stephen Covey. He also read Tony Robbins, but he could have read many other people because there's mounds of intelligence wrapped up in books. He read some things that let him understand that he had hope if he chose hope. He had the capacity to change his circumstances if he chose to change his circumstances, independent of his history. But because of his history, he wanted to make change. You see, he abandoned his wife. He abandoned his son. And he decided he wanted to take care of his son. Now, there's no reason for him to have hope. He's on death row. He has a date certain to be killed by the state for behaviors that he engaged in. And he accepted those behaviors, and yet he decided he wanted to change. He wanted to make amends to society. Fast forward, I'll tell you the quick story. He dreamed. He first imagined, then he wrote down his dream, and then he made commitments to engage in behaviors that he had never engaged in before. He would write his son every single day from prison. He didn't know if his son would ever see any of the letters, or even if he saw the letters that he would ever read them. He did that. And he made a promise to his son that when he got out, not if, when he got out, that he would take care of his son and he would apologize to his ex-wife, who's now married. He would apologize to his son, and he would apologize to society by engaging in behaviors that helped to heal society in ways that were counter to his previous behaviors. Not only did he get out of prison, which he could only imagine, it's not rational. Not only did he apologize to his wife, one of the grandmothers, I don't recall which one it was, kept some of the letters, not all of them, so that she could share it with her grandson at an appropriate time. He thought the letters were all destroyed. So the son didn't believe that he was interesting and that he had transformed. The grandmother shared it with the son, which allowed the son to provide some opening. The ex-wife decided to allow him to take care of the son, and he went on to aggressively seek, in a responsible way, employment. Took him a while because he was honest. He said, listen, I was on death row and I wouldn't hire me. He got hired, ultimately, after unwavering tries. Didn't matter how many tries, he did it. Not only that, he ensured the success of that business as he had promised the owner. And then he went on to create his own business. And then the rest is found in part in this book and many other books he's written. Weldon Long. Now, his story is not unique. His story is found in young people and elders who chose to, and the emphasis on chose, to imagine, to dream big, to operationalize that dream and a goal, and to do more than that, to change behavior in order to move towards the results. Now, what this gentleman and what some of my family members have done, and many individuals I know have done, is they chose to do more than dream, more than write it down, more than have affirmations. They chose to act, to engage in new behaviors that could change, morph things, move them from one paradigm to a qualitatively different set of circumstances, where they could not only imagine, have it codified in a dream, and then further codified in a goal, and then actions that they took. They begin to see different results from the environment. Their environment responded accordingly. The universe responded accordingly. And so they needed resources that they didn't have, just like this gentleman did. Tell my story in a second. The resources just came, but they didn't come without effort. He had to work for it. He had to plant the seed. He had to cultivate the seed. He had to be unwavering and not allow for what? The windstorms, the different insects that needed their nutrients to undermine the cultivation. He had to engage in a way that was harmonious with the environment, and all of a sudden, voila. Some of you are watching this, you understand this. You're doing that. You're acting in ways that are consistent with that clarity of conviction you have. And you're allowing the universe to send signals to you that the universe is ready for you to receive this resource. You don't have to have it right now. Act as though you do. So when it shows up, you're able to say absolutely and have the doors open, your arms open, and your heart open. I want to always remind people that 95% minimum of what we do daily is driven by the emotional mind. I call it the heart mind. And I always say that the heart, we know from scientists, the heart is sending more signals to the brain than the reverse. So the heart is influencing who we are at our core. So when people say, oh, you're just emotional, you're absolutely right. And so is that person stating that in a dismissive tone. He or she tends to miss the point. We are inherently emotional. In fact, when we have that dream, when we're imagining, we want to go deep with it. We want to feel it. We want to smile because we're excited about that space we're going to experience, the people that we're going to be part of, etc. Take a moment and look at some of the comments. I want you to think about imagining possibilities. Whatever it is that you want to level up in whatever way, I want you to dream big. I want you to get to a place where you have a goal that is worthy of you, a huge goal, not something that you could easily achieve. Like you bought a car, you're going to buy another car. So what's magical about that? Yeah, it's a brand new, smells different. You bought a house, you buy a new house. If there's someone who could tell you how to do it, that's not dreaming big. Okay? Dream big. And then ask yourself, what habit do I need to change in order to get there? Because if you've never been there, your current habits are not going to get you there. And when the universe says yes to you, don't be predisposed, especially those of us who are women, to say, oh, give it to somebody else. No, the universe said, you stop, listen, receive. Because the more you say no, you're shutting that blessing off, down, You're locking the door. Say yes, even if you don't understand why you're saying yes. And then allow the universe to teach you, learn from it. And let me say, just because you're clear about your conviction, your vision, you're clear about a new set of habits, you are engaged in them on a consistent basis so that they become part of who you are. You're shifting from one paradigm to another. Does not mean you're not going to have any challenges. In fact, let me be very clear. When you decide on a big goal, a transformative goal, an extraordinary goal, the universe will affirm you by giving you a big challenge. And you'll say, oh my God. And you know what most of us do? We say, oh, that's a signal. I shouldn't be doing this. No, listen, that's the signal that you're on the right track. It may mean that you change course slightly, that you've got to go underground instead of overground, or you've got to go to the right instead of to the left. The point is, if you get a big interruption, that is the universe speaking to you, shaking things up for you. So let's look at a few of these comments. Tomoko writes, powerful. Sometimes we have to let people go who are not healthy for us. That it can be painful. Been there, done that. And it doesn't mean you don't love them anymore. It doesn't mean you don't even like them. It doesn't mean you have no contact with them. You don't allow them to get in your way to undermine your ability to move forward. And let me tell you that when you move into a new paradigm, and that's where there's a new set of habits, there's a new set of belief systems, et cetera, not everybody is there. And you don't have a right to drag people you love to that new paradigm. They may not be ready. They may not need it. Their life trajectory may require that they be in a particular space. I'm going to give you an example of that in a moment. How do we know if the resource or opportunity is right for us? Wow. So, what is the resource? So, if you decided that, let's just say you're going to build a business, you've been an employee for all of your life, whether it's 15 years, whether it's 30 years, you're going to build a business. You have no clue what that means, but you're thinking big. You want to be a multi, whatever, whether it's million, billion dollar business. Every creation starts with an imagination. So you're imagining this and you don't even know what resource you need. And yet what happens is someone shows up and said, I've got some pro bono hours. If you need any help, technological help, let me know. And you're thinking, well, I need to build a business. I don't need technological help. Well, slow down. Okay. That person is in your space for a reason. Yes, you do. Think about what's happening right now. Much of what we're doing is through the use of technology, right? Think about that. That is very powerful. Another example, someone comes to you and says, I've got $1 million. I'd like to just make an investment in an organization that is female run. And I have these requirements. And you look at those requirements and say, oh my God, I could use that $1 million, but I don't meet those requirements. Well, stop it for a moment. Ask yourself, what requirements are being asked for? And are those requirements that you should be meeting? So don't just dismiss it because you don't know what you don't know. And let me tell you, the more I read, the more I learn, I don't know. So be open, be open, be open. So let me tell you one story. I decided that I wanted to, let me first make note of Tumoko's statement. Powerful, the more we say no, the energy we are sending is we are not open to opportunities, right? Yes. We often have advice for saying no. And this is different from what we hear share more. Yeah. So let me give you this example. So I'm at Sonoma State University. And I go to talk to somebody. I don't know this woman. Someone suggested that I speak with her, I think. Lovely woman. And she looks at me and she says, oh, I see you at Stanford. And actually, I see there's multiple opportunities for you there. Now, I'm perfectly happy at Sonoma State University, working in student affairs, doing some lovely work with hundreds of students, thousands of students. And I can't imagine being anyplace else. In fact, every place I've been, I could not imagine being anyplace else until I changed my paradigm and I move to someplace else. So then, of course, in my head, because of my wiring, even as a kid, I didn't share with people. I wouldn't share with people what my plan was, because as a child, I kept hearing no, literally no. No, you won't live to the age of 20, so don't worry about it. No, you are not the right color. No, you are, you're female. No, I mean, literally, explicitly and implicitly. So I'd learned by then. I'm in my 20s, I think late 20s, and maybe I'm early 30s, I don't recall. In any event, I hear this woman, and I thought, what is Stanford all about? I'd never heard of the university, even though I'm in California, in the US. So I decided to kind of look it over. And then I found two positions I was interested in. Now, of course, one could say I was guided, which I was, and I didn't know who this person was. And I just thought her statements to me were kind of out of the air and from nowhere, and yet they were from someplace. So I decided to listen. And so I went to the institution, but I did more. I ran around the community and I spoke to at least 30 different individuals. And each time I spoke to someone, I said, can you recommend someone else I can talk with to get more information about the institution? I didn't know what I was doing. I just wanted to understand what the institution was about and if it was synergistic with my values, those values I understood at that moment. In the meantime, I decided to apply for both positions. And the first interview came up and it was quite curious. And I was just, I wasn't wedded to working there. And yet when I talked with the hiring manager, I thought, well, I think I'm interested in this. So I went ahead and packed all my items, even before I got the opportunity, because that's the way I'm driven. And sure enough, I got a call saying, we'd love to hire you, blah, blah, blah. So, out of excitement, I'm thinking, oh, okay, this is the opportunity that was available to me that I never thought about. And yet my dream was to have a greater impact on a community that was more diverse. And guess what? The role that I would take on had that opportunity. And it didn't dismiss the roles that I was in at the previous institution, which I loved. And so I decided to do something. After I was given the role, and I just had to sign the paperwork, I went to talk to somebody, and I won't mention the position or the title or the person to honor that individual. That person went on to become a university president, but I'm talking to this person, and in a very strategic leadership role, brilliant man, a researcher, a scientist, et cetera, who I knew valued me. And I said, I'm thinking about working at Stanford. What do you think? He said, oh, no, they don't hire Black people. No, don't even consider it. And I was just overwhelmed. There was that little girl in me saying, oh my God, not again, even another person who values me. And so after he finished and he was done, he kind of exhausted himself by telling me all the reasons why not. I said, well, I was just asking because I was just offered the position. Oh, you're a wonderful, of course they hired you. You're spectacular, etc. And I'm like, So here, that's an example of not you saying no. That's an example of you answering to the universe call to be synergistic, but someone else saying no. And yet, had I not acted and had I gotten that feedback initially, it would have informed my behavior. And I'm glad it did. And yet I could have been that person to say, after I studied the institution, they have too few Blacks and women they wouldn't hire in this leadership role, blah, blah, blah. You hear what I'm talking about? The noise? Tune down the noise, even the noise within. So thank you for writing. What is this here? Powerful. The more we say no, the energy we are sending is that we're not open. Okay, we stated that. I just want to emphasize to you, let's pay attention to the essence of who we are. And what do I mean by that? It's easy for me to make the following statement. I'm naturally an introvert. So I spend a lot of time in my body, in my head. And that's not inherently better than anyone else or worse than anyone else. It just is. And so I get the opportunity at least daily, and sometimes multiple times of the day, to assess, to self-assess, to reassess, and then decide, and then to choose a new habit if I choose to do so, and then act and consistently act for a minimum of 30 days so I can install that new habit and then look at the riches of the feedback that I get from my own switching up the behavior. That's called leveling up. So let me just summarize this before we take more questions. Leveling up is choosing to imagine, envision, choosing to decide, choosing to create, choosing to use a new habit to transform things. It's choosing to have faith, to be emotionally committed as you have faith and you focus, and to act accordingly and always be responsible. Jack, can you share one of the other questions that was asked prior to the show? Well, I hope now you understand leveling up. It's really about getting a better result. Let's just simplify it. And how do you get that better result? So as you've heard me share the examples, please think about these examples. Where you've been is an indication of why you're where you're at. And as one of my previous guests conveyed nicely and more elegantly than I will, where you're going to be is based upon the actions that you're going to take now. The actions you're taking in this moment in time. And remember, we don't have yesterday, we don't have tomorrow, but we have now. And if you're like me and many others on this planet, you believe that the past and the future coexist with the present. So we get to influence all aspects of life. Act now in a way that's synergistic with what you idealize. Even if it's uncomfortable, you can't really imagine it happening, but you idealize it. Why not? Life is so rich with possibilities. Leverage them. Next question, Jet. I've always been taught to follow the crowd. I think a number of us have heard that and experienced that. And so have my friends. How do I change this habit? Or when should I? The urgency, from my humble perspective, to be who you are can't be greater. This life, this planet needs each one of us to be authentically healthy. We need the best of you now, not yesterday, not 2 minutes from now, now. So if the external environment, being driven by that, has gotten you to a place where you're completely happy, you are healthy, you're resolved, then I'd say you're fine. Most of us are not, though. Most of us are not at the capacity that we could be at. And that's why I encourage you to do as was articulated earlier. And so do it now. And how do you do it? I think I just gave you some steps. Understand you have the right to choose the values that define you. What are values? They're principles. They're like choosing to be respectful, choosing to be collaborative, choosing to function and live with integrity, choosing to be honest, choosing to value the diversity of people, of talents, of opportunities. I keep using that word choose again. Next question, Jet. My team needs to be leveled up. Any tips? Yes. I want to speak to that. A number of us who lead, we believe that we have to have all the solutions. The most effective leaders that I have studied, that I've observed, that I've worked with, they understand they do not need to have all the solutions. In fact, they guard against showing even some of the solutions that they have because they believe that the team itself creates solutions generally coached and facilitated and guided appropriately and supported appropriately, the team creates better result than an individual can create, including that leader of that team. So the question again, Jet, can you put it back up there? I want to make certain I got it. How to level up my team. Remember, your role is to inspire, to facilitate, to coach, to provide resources, to acknowledge the talent, to understand the talents, the strengths that each individual who is a member of your team has, to even know their weaknesses so that you understand how to work with the team to minimize the weaknesses and maximize, illuminate the strengths. And assume that you don't know everything. Assume that together with your team, you will know massively, you will know much more. Assume that failure is a precondition to real solutions, permanent solutions, or sustainable solutions. Failure is a precondition, and risk-taking is a precondition to the kind of learning and growth that the individuals in that team needs. And so when the team is engaged in some transaction and your wiring is to go and say, I can solve it, it's taken too long. Leverage that extra day. Leverage that extra week. Leverage that extra month. I know it's hard because when they learn the necessary skills, develop the necessary knowledge, and collectively go through the forming, storming, and norming phases of building the team, all of a sudden, when you say X needs to be done, you don't have people saying, how do we do it? You have people saying, we got it. When you begin to think about an issue, one of your team members or the whole team may come to you and say, we saw that issue and here's a solution. So you're looking forward to facilitating greatness among each member of the team. And let me say something that may be uncomfortable. We have team members, sometimes they're complete distractors from the work, we think. And oftentimes they are. And it may be one person, it may be multiple people, it may be even a group. Those so-called disruptors may be powerful in the same way I said, let the universe send to you and ask yourself how you can leverage it. Well, those individuals may be part of the universal factors, variables to shake things up. Listen to them. Ask them questions. Go deep with them. It may be that one or more just likes to be a detractor. But even that individual is detracting for a reason. Maybe historically he or she or they were dismissed. And now, because of you, they're experiencing their own value. And their predisposition now is to invest, to add value. In fact, to accelerate the level of value that the organization brings to the community or to whatever audiences it's to bring. So think about the role of leadership. And if you need support, get coaching. I'm a coach. I know a lot of other coaches. It's not about me letting you know I'm the right one or the folks I know. There are many coaches. Ensure you have the support to facilitate the development of the team so that actually they are powerful. They can level up. And there's more that I can share. And I would encourage you to watch Lead Live because every week we're sharing one additional gem, at least, if not many, that will help you level up your team. I hope that's helpful. Many of us feel like, I like this comment, many of us feel like we need to have all the right credentials, skills, and experiences to be successful. We are often taught to go to college, get a degree, an advanced degree to make more money so we can get a good job. Some of us don't feel like it's enough. We have followed the high expectations that were set to us, yet many of us are still not there. What are we missing? Whoa. Let's leave that up there, Jet, for a moment. What are we missing? We followed the high expectations and we've achieved. We earned the degrees. We've earned, even sometimes we've earned a lot of money. We've certainly earned the titles, etc. And we feel like there's something missing. And I say at the core, what's missing is that internal journey. The moment we go within, the moment we are in that silent mode where we turn down the noise, even if the noise sounds great, it's great hip hop, great classical music, jazz, salsa music, whatever it is, we turn that wonderful African music down, that international music down. We turn down the news. We turn down our family's voices that won't allow us to hear ourselves. We love them all. Turn them down. Go within. Clarify who we are, what drives us, what's at the core of our values. What are we inspired by that may allow us to be able to imagine more? And then what dream do we want to pursue? So we may become a doctor and literally are running a major clinic. And we love helping people, especially now during this major pandemic that has been absolutely horrific. And we've contributed remarkably. And yet, at the core, when you turn all the noise down, you realize what you always aspired to be was a musician. And you love sculpting. And so, why have you not allowed yourself to experience that in your life? And a lot of us pursue education to get a job to become wealthy. Well, I think we know from so many lived experiences and a lot of good, rich texts that we can share with you. You don't get wealthy by having a job. Doesn't matter how powerfully effective you are. You don't earn wealth. And what is wealth? It's faith, it's family, it's fun, it's fitness, and it's finance. You get wealth by doing the things that I recommend you do and more. But at the core, it's being clear about what that means for you. I hope that helps. Are there any other questions yet? I feel dismissed by my supervisor. I try to contribute, yet feel like I do not matter to the organization. How does leveling up apply to me? Let's leave that up for a moment. Wow. I want to honor you. Whether your supervisor has hundreds of people or thousands of people, and you're lost in the mix because he or she is focusing on so-called real work, getting the getting the product to the market, getting revenue generated, addressing the squeaky wheels or the folks who are demanding the time or whatever, or the supervisor is just dismissed. When you feel like your contributions, your very presence is dismissed, that's harmful. And I want to just honor that and apologize to you as just another human being for you having to experience that. And yet inside the voice says you shouldn't be apologizing. But I want to explain why I want to apologize. Because all of us are to be honored. So I'll put it at that. And then at the same time, that feeling you have, that real feeling you have, may be part of the universe saying there's another opportunity for you. And that's the part that says don't apologize. Help you understand that where you're at is no indication of where you have the capacity to be. So ask yourself, as one of my professors many years ago, she was a Dr. Hayward at University of California, Riverside, back in the 70s. When I said no one was listening to me, she says, she looked at me very plainly and then told me to leave her office. But she said, if people don't appreciate what you have to offer at this moment in time, where you're at, then go someplace else where they will. And I know it's hard right now. There are millions of people who no longer have a gig, no longer have a job. And I don't mean to be dismissive at all. because it's a painful experience for a lot of people. Yet there's a lot of opportunities right now, too, to look at where many people have a need and ask yourself how you can fill that need. Whether it's another organization, whether it's creating your own organization, recognize your capacity to do much more than be an employee in that space. The other is, while you're in the space, before you leave, you get to turn things around. Your consciousness, your very thinking about what you're experiencing. Doesn't matter if it's 100% accurate or 75% accurate. You get to shift things. You get to say to yourself, I honor everyone in this organization, including my supervisor, independent of how that supervisor treats me. I'm going to give my best for as long as I'm here, and I'm going to honor the supervisor's needs in a way that is not only legal, that is with a great deal of integrity, and I'm going to make certain that that supervisor sees my work. Period. That may be it. And then you're there for the next month and you get another gig, or you're there for the next 50 years. I'm being a little bit extreme, but you get my point, I hope. Let me give you an example. And I'll use this because it's such a salient example. I had the opportunity to speak with someone who will probably be on one of the Lead Live series. She has earned her medical degree. She's also earned her PhD degree. She was born in a foreign country, and then she went to another foreign country, not the US. And she went there on a visa. And because she's brilliant, they asked her to be in a postdoc program. Or in the PhD program, excuse me, I got that right. I may misrepresent this story, so not intentionally. And so she had some difficulties. Her husband just something happened to him. I don't know if he had a mental breakdown, but he began to abuse her in a way that her life was at risk. And these folks didn't know her in this new country. In fact, she was learning the language. And it went from a peaceful, loving, remarkable experience for her, and overnight like that, she feared for her life and her children's life. She had a couple of children. And the people at the institution didn't know her, but they got wind that something was happening. Now, all the men thought she was the problem. And culturally, because this was in Japan, the assumption was the female had done something wrong. And she's from a different culture and continent, for that matter, and felt extremely bad, extremely and fearful that her visa would be dismissed and she would be required to go back to the country where she originated. And then she knew that her husband would take her out. She would no longer be able to take care of her kids because she would be killed, literally. So, but here's the deal. The folks around her, including her professors, who were really literally her supervisors, supervising her work, whatever they call it there, but real work in different organizations, because she's doing some work that influences the government in terms of its health agenda. They find out, and what do? They just enshrine her. They take care of her kids, make certain that she has childcare. These are professors of the university. They make certain that she's able to take her exams. She does all the work. She also does do the work. And they make certain that she has a safe environment. And they also work behind the scenes to make certain that the governmental entity understood that she wasn't the problem. It was her soon-to-be ex-husband. There's more to the story. It's pretty horrific, but then it becomes remarkable. So she gets through that. And then she's working at a place in order to make ends meet, and she needs this job. It's a remarkable job. So I'll cut to the chase. She understands also everything in her tells her, because she's being mistreated royally at the job. It feels like what her husband did, but it's all emotional. And she can't afford to lose the job because she'll lose the visa and she has to go back to the country, and we know what will happen. So she decides to dream, and she decides to dream big. She hasn't read it in some book anywhere. She just feels it. She goes within, she's thinking about her children, and she's thinking about protecting their ability to live and be successful. And she's doing remarkably well She's finishing up her PhD. She's into a postdoc. She's doing this remarkable things, except so she decided to dream. She wants to become what? A professor at the university. Not only that, she wants to work with the government in an official capacity, but she doesn't have that as a full-time gig or even a part-time gig. And she decides, I want a part-time gig first and then a full-time gig. She maps all this out. She's very clear. And then she thinks about it consistently. And guess what happens? A year goes by, nothing happens. She has this supervisor who is harming her emotionally, causing her to literally lose it. And finally, she says, I can't take it anymore. She already had written her letter of resignation. She finally submits it. She submits it. Her supervisor freaks out and comes to her and tells her thing that would never said to her before. She says, you're the best employee we've ever had. In fact, if you go, the business may crumble. You've helped us to build this into a major organization. We can't afford to lose. We will double your salary. We will triple. I will take care of your kids. She went on and on. And this woman is so deferential. She never told the woman, you harmed me for years. I can't deal with this anymore. She just simply said, I'll add a few extra weeks to my time, but I really must end this. She delayed the opportunities in her dream. But here's what happened. She provided the resignation. She experienced the resignation. She didn't know where she was going, what she was going to do. Literally, the next day she gets a call. Says, we'd like to interview you for a part-time professor position. It wasn't even open. And then she goes into the interview. They're so impressed with her. And there's some governmental officials there for some reason. And so someone asked her at the end of the interview, we have a full-time gig also available. Would you be interested after you've worked in this part-time position for a while? I can't tell a better story. That remarkable woman is living the dream. And that's what I want to say to you. Live the dream. You have the dream within you. And the folks that you look at and you say, oh my God, that person's living the dream. That person's living the dream. You really don't know. What you see is a manifestation of some things that you value. You don't know if they're living their dream until they tell you, assuming that they're honest, they're living their dream. So I say to you and everyone else, ask yourself, am I internally driven? I want to lead. I want to lead with distinction. I want to lead in a way that evidence my values. I never have to say what they are. People feel it. I want to leave a lasting impression. I want to leave a legacy that supports not only my family, communities, the country, the world, whatever it is, do it big. You have the capacity. And literally, everything starts with a thought. Your imagination is one of your most powerful mental tools. And your ability to choose as a human being, wow. You are great. Now get to the business of experiencing more of your greatness. Jet, did I understand there's another question? If not, we may bring this to a close in a few moments. I think that's the last question. Thank you so much, Jet. I hope you were inspired at least by this sharing. If you're in the United States, I also hope you're voting. And everywhere else you are at on the planet, please exercise your rights. You and countless others before us have ensured that we have the ability to live the way we're living. And we are in a position to make the way we experience life even more profoundly complementary to our spirit, to our essence as spirit beings and human form. Exercise your rights, always. Never acquiesce. And remember, even if you don't vote physically, you're voting. Thank you too for the comments shared. Thank you, Tomoko, and many others. Be a blessing, yes, to everyone. Start with being a blessing to yourself. And wow, life just transforms in magical ways. My honor, Wado. Our next show, you will be inspired. Dr. Cheryl Anderson, PhD, Master's in Public Health, Master's of Science. This woman has been many places in this country, many prestigious universities. But at her core, it's all about influencing the health care system with colleagues, numerous colleagues, who are researchers, who are practitioners, who are educators. So I am honored to have Dr. Anderson on the show next week. Please join us. And yes, we will talk about that important topic of ethical, equity-centered, and effective leadership. Thank you so much, everyone.